Howdy everyone, Son of a Boomer here. Today we're talking about the Heritage Rough Rider. Let's get to it. I don't think you made it. Heritage Manufacturing is a USA-based company that focuses on making, as their name implies, guns that follow the American heritage. For instance, in front of us we have their Rough Rider series. This is their most common gun. It's also probably one of the cheapest guns on the market currently. It is chambered in 22 LR, but it also has 22 Magnum cylinders that are readily available. This revolver is a single action revolver, meaning that you have to cock it each time you want to fire. And I have the safety on, we'll get into that later. Speaking of the hammer, if we listen really closely, you will hear 4 distinctive clicks. Those 4 distinctive clicks are reminiscent of the original Colt single action army revolvers that Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders carried, hence the name Rough Rider. This is kind of a clone in 22 of what they used to carry. Now, when you're looking for a Heritage Rough Rider, here at the grip is where you're probably going to find the most customizability and the most options. I think there are hundreds of different options on Heritage's website alone. I stuck with their traditional Cocobolo grips because I think they just really accent the piece well. I think they look good, and it's hard to beat wood in terms of looks. So they feel good, it's comfortable in the hand. You can see an interesting feature that I mentioned before. We have the safety. Red means dead, and the safety's on. And basically what that does, you'll see this little bar. Right now it's on safe. When I rotate that down, it makes room for the hammer to come down and hit that pin and thus set off the cartridge. Safeties on single action revolvers are actually very uncommon, mainly because this whole gun is essentially a safety. You literally can't fire it. That's why you see people in the Old West movies, they'll twirl the gun around because it literally cannot be fired unless the hammer is cocked back. Or theoretically, something hits the hammer. You could hit that hammer really hard. But with that safety, it makes it completely impossible for this gun to go off unless you intend it to. Now, this version has a 6.5-inch barrel, but like I said, there are many different renditions of this. I've seen them all the way from a 1-inch barrel all the way out to a 16-inch barrel. You're gonna end up looking like Jack Nicholson playing the Joker, pulling it out of his pants. The sights on these are just a single groove in the back, as well as a front blade sight. Now, I and many others have come to the conclusion that the front sight is often too high and large, so many people end up whittling them down. I've done a little bit of that. I'm still trying to find the proper groove of it. The finish on this gun is not great, but it's also a very inexpensive gun. It also makes it really easy to just not worry about the gun. It's not going to be a safe queen by any means. To use this gun, it's pretty easy. Simply cock the hammer to half cock. You open up the loading gate. You can insert each round into the cylinder. After that's done, you close the loading gate, you cock it all the way back, and we have the safety on. It fires. To unload it, do the same thing. You put it on half cock, open the loading gate, and you'll notice up here underneath the barrel, there's a little springy thing. This is the ejector rod, and when I push it, you'll see it will push the spent cartridge out. And so each time you rotate it, you have to hit the next one out. The gun is incredibly simple. However, a lot of these features that make it so simple end up kind of making it complicated for some people. You know, the half cock, and sometimes you don't cock it all the way. You think it's all the way, and it's not. Opening the loading gate, pushing out the spent cartridges. These are all very simple things, but put together, they can be kind of difficult, as opposed to a modern day autoloader where I just rack the slide, pull the trigger, and when it's done, I hit a button to release the magazine. So I want to talk about my experiences with this gun. I really like this gun. Do have a couple caveats with that. But let's start with the good. I think it's a very fun gun. I like the fact that it's inexpensive, that it's cheap to shoot. 22 and 22 Magnum gives you good versatility. You know, you can just plink, or if you want just a little bit of extra ump, you can throw in the Magnum cylinder. It's a pretty accurate gun. You feel like a cowboy anytime you shoot it, hence the getup for today. You're not gonna see this all the time. You're not gonna burn through a ton of ammo because it's only 6 shots. So that's nice. But overall, it's just a fun range toy and plinker. My one issue with it, and I'm going to tell you a story before I tell you my issue with it, because I feel like it's important that I let you know what my experiences have been with this firearm that could have potentially caused my problem. I don't think it caused the problem, but I'm going to tell it to you anyways. I had a 22 Magnum cylinder in here about a year ago, and I was shooting some ammo. I believe it was Remington. I don't remember exactly. But what ended up happening was I had a bad round. I noticed a couple of the rounds were a little louder than typical for 22 Magnum, but I just chalked that up to like, oh, well, it's a different brand. I now believe that that box of ammunition was faulty in some way, because what ended up happening, and I'll put up a picture of the cartridge, is I had a very bad round. So bad that it detonated when it went off. It basically detonated in the gun. You might be thinking that's what a round is supposed to do, but it was bad because it ended up shearing off the rim of the 22 Magnum cartridge, and powder sprayed out between the gaps of the gun. And I wasn't wearing gloves, but my hand was just covered in powder, and I was picking little pieces of powder and stuff out of my finger for about a week. I wasn't hurt permanently or anything. There was no major injury. I tell you that because what has happened over the course of me having this is that screws have begun to back out, and in fact, this screw right here has been of particular issue. This is the ejector rod assembly. Basically everything's housed inside of here, and this little screw, I have a couple different versions of that screw sent to me by Heritage. It only uses about 2 or 3 threads to grab into the rest of the gun. Now there are deeper drilled, or whatever you call it, threads in there, so you can, if you have a longer screw, it'll screw in there even further. But the recoil, even though it's not much, eventually the vibrations and such eventually sheared off the threads, causing this gun to not be able to be unloaded unless I took the entire cylinder out of the gun. Now, those vibrations from the faulty rounds, could that be part of the problem that caused them to get sheared off? Possibly. I have done some research online, and it seems like other people have this kind of problem too, though. I think that Heritage needs to step up its game when it comes to their screws that they use to hold the gun together. I think they need to just use higher quality parts in regards to that. Other than that, though, it's a really fun gun, and as long as you know when you purchase the gun that it is a cheaper gun, and with that there's going to be certain maintenance and things that you wouldn't have to do to more expensive guns, it is a good option for plinking around and just having fun. Those of you who do have them, I recommend you go through your screws on the gun, put some Loctite on them, tighten them down every, I don't know, a couple hundred rounds. Go and check them, make sure they're all looking good. But anyways, guys, I think it's a fun gun. I really enjoy it. Despite those issues that I have, I really like the gun. So if you liked this video and you want to see more of these sorts of videos, let me know in the comments. Please go ahead and subscribe. I do videos like this every week or two, trying to just share as much as I can about firearms with newcomers. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.